Welcome to another installment of This Is Not Normal on the Political Drain podcast with Drill Sergeant Doug, aka Admin Doug, a U.S. Army veteran, teacher, musician, and family man from Jamaica, now fights for justice and democracy through commentary and humor. Follow him on YouTube at Political Drain and at Sons of Liberty Official as Drill Sergeant, aka Admin Doug, continues to protect our freedoms.
You may recognize the voice of the speaker.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran.
What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here. And in the midst of the news of war today and everything that you're about to hear, I wanted to come on here and give you what I think is the most important things to know. I have one PSA and I have three takeaways that I think will help you contextualize, understand, and interpret everything that you're hearing from the media and that you need to know as an American citizen. I'll start with the PSA. In the first 72 hours of any conflict, especially major combat conflicts, all information given by the state is propaganda, and all information given by the media is inconclusive. Notice I said propaganda, not true or false. In the midst of a war, especially the first 72 hours, the state is curating everything to ensure that they're gaining an advantage and not losing an advantage. That's how it works. It doesn't mean that they're saying something wrong or false. They could be, but propaganda can be true or false. It's when they choose to use it and how they choose to frame it. So if you know that going in, everything you hear from Bebe when he says that they killed the Ayatollah leader or they killed the supreme leader or whatever they say happened is propaganda and should be taken as such, as well as anything we say. If you remember the last time we had strikes, the nuclear program was obliterated. And last night, Trump came on and said, we have to make sure they don't have a nuclear program. Somehow, obliteration doesn't mean obliteration anymore. Now, the other side of that is everything coming from the media is inconclusive. Again, that doesn't mean true or false. I said inconclusive because the numbers that come out will change. The targets that were hit will change. The casualties as well as the survivors, the places, the movements, all of these are given by state actors who are giving propaganda or people on the ground who are not exactly one of the military or the people being affected by it. They are reporting on it, but it will change. So everything that you hear, they're going to try to give you numbers, the amount of the dead that will rise. They're going to try to tell you who's being deployed and who's not. That will change because there has to be secret deployments that you don't know about, as well as misinformation given by both sides that the media will report on as if it's fact. And I'm here to tell you the best way to understand the first 72 hours of any major conflict is to understand that all state information is propaganda and all information coming from the media that pertains to the act is inconclusive. Now, here are the three takeaways you need to know. I will, to the best of my knowledge, when I think I can give you something that's conclusive, even though I know it may not be, give you what I think you need to know. But the takeaways, these are things that are true whether or not the news reporting pans out. Like how this started. The media is going to tell you something about October 7th. They're going to start the timeline there. And so it's imperative that I let you know the real takeaway is that's not the case. The real timeline is before October 7th, about 3 months before October 7th, there was a treaty signed by Jared Kushner and the once finance minister of Israel. I'll have a clip here and I'll have you see the whole video here. They got the Gulf states, which is all of the Muslim countries except Iran, to sign on to a deal that says that they can now deal with Israel. Before, they weren't seeing Israel as a country. None of those Muslim states did. But now they decided to go into this deal. And the ex-finance minister of Israel and Jared Kushner own a real estate, let's call it hedge fund, a real estate hedge fund. They got all of those Muslim countries, right? UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain, to those people who signed on there, all of a sudden now can build and change money that they never could before, build on each other's land like they never could before. And 3 months after that, there was an attack in Israel, and Palestine is almost desolate and gone. And if we remember, right around that time, Jared Kushner said this. Jared Kushner, he's the one who said this.
Right between them and Gaza's waterfront property. It could be very valuable to, if people would focus on kind of building up, livelihoods. It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up.
And that's the why. There you go. I'm trying to be quick, and I'm going to end it there. When they tell you where it started in the timeline of this, remember that it didn't start in October 7th. It started when it became necessary to get rid of the people in Palestine so that the kings and queens who signed on to this Gulf states could build and make money once the Palestinians were gone. The second takeaway is we knew this was coming. We knew this was coming. You see, Iran, like I said before, did not participate and become one of the Gulf states. So in order for these rich people and these kings and queens who are also in the Epstein files, many of them, let's not forget that, why they need somewhere to go to build and statues to themselves and hotels that nobody can hold accountable. Anyway, when they do that, Iran will still be there, and they will not be able to live in peace in Palestine without looking over their shoulder unless they change the regime in Iran. So, yeah, the timing is distraction from the Epstein files or the low poll numbers and everything else. That's true, but that's just timing. The truth is, this was in plan, like I said, before 2020 and before that October 7th horrible tragedy, in which has been done 20 times over by Israel. So this is how we know they planned it ahead of time to go exactly this way last night.
They're actually pretty normal, but they normally don't become public before things get started, and almost never come out before the U.S. population is already primed and is too busy slapping yellow ribbons on their cars to notice. The reporting says that the administration knows it's having trouble convincing Americans to really rally behind the idea of a large operation against Iran. Specifically, they seem to realize that while Republicans support the idea of regime change, they wouldn't if it put Americans at risk. They've come up with a couple of ideas on how to manufacture consent, and they're as cynical as they are likely to work. I want to stop for a second and suggest that if the administration is worried about the optics of a war and how to spin it politically, then, well, that war is not a war of necessity. It's an elective war the administration is choosing to pursue. So, this is what came out in the reporting from somebody familiar with the discussion. Quote, "There's thinking in and around the administration that the politics are a lot better if the Israelis go first and alone, and the Iranians retaliate against us and give us more reason to take action." So even though it's been telegraphed well ahead of time, the idea is to try to frame it as a defensive action of the U.S. coming in to help an ally, when in reality, it's scripted ahead of time. The unspoken part of this is that if Israel was to go first, Iran would respond. In the current dynamics, it would be unlikely for Iran to respond solely against Israel. If U.S. forces were attacked during the response, it would provide the catalyst to get Americans behind Trump's elective war. Another statement made was, quote, "If we're talking about a regime change scale attack, Iran is very likely to retaliate with everything they've got. We have a lot of assets in the region, and every one of those is a potential target. And they're not under the Iron Dome. So there's a high likelihood of American casualties, and that comes with lots of political risk." A high likelihood of American casualties.
Our government, United States government, President Donald Trump, signed on to do something that he knew would get Americans killed so that it would manufacture consent for a war that would make the Epstein class feel freer to build hotels on the bones of dead Palestinians and never have to look over their shoulder again. That's the takeaway that you're not going to hear today, and the context you need to know. Before I get to the final third point, I have an addendum that's going to tie both of the things I said before together. We'll call this an editorial addendum. Also very important. And it's something that Bibi said, the Prime Minister of Israel. This is what he said, and this was my takeaway last night when he said it, when we were live. Watch this, and you'll understand.
Has started. And again, I address the Iranian people, the Iranian army. You are not our enemy. We are not your enemy. Our common enemy is the oppressive tyrant regime that have taken illegal possession of your lives.
Wow.
Every army man who lays down his arm will be offered safe exit.
Wow.
It is your opportunity. The Iranian army, the Iranian people, it is your opportunity to have a new Iran, a free, liberated Iran. We, together with the United States, will work for peace and prosperity in this region. 2005 years ago, the old Persian Empire had the same goal to exterminate our nation. Yet Mordecai, the king, and these glorious feast days, they stood up, and the tyrant ruler of Persia, Cyrus, had fallen.
Oh my God.
Equally, the current criminal regime of Iran will fall.
Oh my God. I think you need to understand what he just said, people. He just made the claim that not only will he use to kill Iranians and destroy their country, but that gives him carte blanche to Palestine. He said 2,000 years ago, the king of Persia wanted to get rid of Israel, and he fell. That time is what the Israelis used to say that that land that they just took in 1940-something, 48, from Palestine is theirs. He is now outwardly in broad daylight using the excuse that all of that land is his and they deserve to be exterminated. That's what you just heard. That's what is referenced in the 2,000-year-old Persian story. This is unbelievable. They took him off right after that because they heard the same thing I just did. He just made the excuse for the extermination of Palestine whilst bombing a separate country and telling the people in that country that he's not their enemy.
There you have it. This is the context that you're not going to get from the mainstream media. But there's a third takeaway. The third takeaway is said best really by Keith Olbermann, of all people.
I do not feel I have to, like last time with Bush in Iraq, have to lead any of the protests against Trump's insanity here. I have the words of others, to quote, others who have warned for years what war in Iran would mean, to quote, and I have had them at hand all this time, to quote, and I will now quote them. Quote, the United States has spent $8 trillion fighting and policing in the Middle East. Thousands of our great soldiers have died or been badly wounded. Millions of people have died on the other side. Going into the Middle East is the worst decision ever made, unquote. Said by Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, October 9th, 2019. Also, quote, to anyone still gullible enough to fall for scummy media hoaxes, Trump said warmongering neocons love sending your kids to die for wars they would never fight themselves. Liz Cheney is Kamala's top advisor. Liz wants to invade the whole Middle East. Kamala equals World War III. Trump equals peace. Quote, the pocket Nosferatu, Stephen Miller, November 1st, 2024. Quote, don't let Obama play the Iran card in order to start a war in order to get elected. Be careful, Republicans. Donald Trump, October 22, 2012. Remember that I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly. Not skilled. Donald Trump, November 10th, 2013. And one more inarguable argument against what Donald Trump has done while you were sleeping from 2011. You may recognize the voice of the speaker.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran.
Yes. Will you be able to stop an election by having war? No. If the Civil War couldn't do that, no war can. But the more that the media, who's unfortunately in America, the mainstream media, has just become a propaganda arm of the state, talks about it like there's something that can be done like that, it makes it more valid. They're giving validity to something that is not able to happen. They're run by the states. That's it. The Civil War could not stop an election. A war in Iran surely cannot. On the other hand, for every other reason that Trump said we shouldn't be there when there was somebody else's president. Yeah, these are true. And as usual, he tells on himself. And there's something else in there that I'm going to harp on, and many people won't like it. In that statement, one of the things that Keith Olbermann reminded us of was when Trump said Elizabeth Cheney is Kamala's, right-hand person, and they're going to start World War III. For the rest of you people standing on soapboxes, talking about third party, and feeling good about yourselves, I hope that they build a gold statue of you as well on the bones of the dead Palestinians who died quicker, who died of hunger, and whose blockades were dismissed the minute Trump got in office because of your poor decision and your need to feel better than other people, rather than be an adult and do what you know is better, like not giving the country to a grapist, to a felon, to a warmonger. And no matter what the geopolitical ties of the day were, there was no plan during the Biden administration to do this. Thank you for your poor decision and your selfishness in a time when adult decision-making was needed. Go F yourself. The time to fight is now. People are in Washington, D.C. right now. There's a rally right now in Washington, D.C. Check it out. We're not stopping the fight. We're just getting started.
Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads. It's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works.
That was the Political Drain podcast, which can be heard on www.groovechillradio.com/political-drain and can be viewed on the Political Drain YouTube channel anytime. Once again, thank you for listening to Groove Chill as we resist fascism in any form, pursue democracy, peace, and love.